Shuts every. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for May 12th, 2025. And tonight we are going to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of remote attendance if needed, and I do not believe any remote attendance is needed tonight. Next, alderpersons wishing to be heard.
Mayor,
Alderperson Martin.
has there been any updates from the Hanks Foundation?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Any other alderpersons wishing to be heard? All right, next, citizens wishing to be heard.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Jacob Spitzer, and I live here in Washington. I previously spoke at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on May 7th to share my support for the proposed ordinance to allow backyard chickens within city limits. My original memo and request can be found with the minutes from that meeting. I appreciate the thoughtful work that's gone into this so far, and I'm here tonight to continue that conversation and offer a few more points for your consideration as the council prepares for a future first reading ordinance. For me and many families, this proposed ordinance is about more than just chickens. It's about health, education, and the ability to make thoughtful, sustainable choices. Fresh eggs from backyard hens are more nutritious, and raising chickens teaches children where their food comes from. These are lessons that will stick for a lifetime. Allowing backyard chickens also supports local businesses like Runnings, which supply chicken feed, chicks, and specialized coop accessories. Instead of purchasing a pre-built coop, those who decide to build on their own support other local businesses like Nina Ace Hardware and Menards. All of these transactions generate sales tax revenue for the city. I support many of the restrictions in the draft ordinance, such as a 5-hen limit, no roosters, and requirements for cleanliness and odor control. These are smart and reasonable safeguards to ensure neighborhood harmony. However, I remain concerned about the proposed minimum lot size of 3/4 of an acre. According to the memo presented in the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, that requirement excludes over 90% of properties in Washington. That means most families who want to responsibly raise chickens and who are willing to adhere to all rules and guidelines set by the city won't even be eligible to participate. On top of that, the proposed setback requirements make it even more restrictive. The current draft requires coops to be placed at least 15 feet from any side or rear property line and at least 25 feet from any residential structure on an adjacent lot. These significantly limit placement options, especially on smaller lots. That's why I respectfully ask the council when it comes time for the first reading ordinance to consider my proposed amendment reducing the minimum lot size from 3/4 of an acre to 1/4 acre. Even at that reduced size, not every property would qualify once you apply the setback rules, but would open the door to many more responsible, committed families. I also encourage you to include an option for a case-by-case approval for lots smaller than 1/4 of an acre, particularly those in lower density areas or not directly next to other homes. A conditional use process or administrative review would allow the city to maintain oversight and ensure neighborhood compatibility while giving residents a fair opportunity. It's important to remember that the people who are waiting for the city to adopt a permitted chicken ordinance are often the most committed. They're the ones, like myself, who will take the time to do things right, including building safe, clean coops, managing waste properly, and following the rules the city puts in place. This is an opportunity to make the ordinance both safe and inclusive to support healthier families, hands-on learning for kids, and a stronger sense of connection to our food. I hope you'll consider these suggestions as you move toward a vote at the first ordinance hearing. Thank you for your time and continuing to listen to the residents you serve.
Thank you. Are there any other persons wishing to be heard?
Push a button. Sorry, didn't know. Whoa, this is fancy. Okay. Jewel Ward, Washington citizen. I'm here to talk tonight about an item on the agenda, item D, for alderpersons and mayor term limits for discussion. I know it's hard for people to run for city council, school board, park district, and usually there's a limited amount of people that will run. I just want you to consider, before you do that, anyone can be voted out of office at the next election, but to put term limits on something really could hinder the history of the board or the council that you have. And I just want you to consider that because I think the history of it, I don't know who the longest serving member is on this as alderperson or mayor, but I don't think it's over 12 years. Just when you have that discussion, I just want you to be mindful that it's limited on people that are willing to serve, and also they can be voted out of office if people don't want them there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name's Chris Haston. I just had a couple things. I'm in charge with the food pantry garden here in Washington. I know we have a lot of new board members here, or aldermen here, so I didn't know. It's behind the firehouse and next to 5 Points. And we provide over 5,000 pounds of fresh produce to local pantries throughout the summer. We get our water from the firehouse, which is wonderful, but we've been having a lot of issues with water pressure at the garden. And I know we talked about, we had concerns about it when the evidence building was going up, and I talked with Chief McCoy, and he did sign something to have the water line increased to 4 inches when they were doing the building, but he said it might be later in the summer. But I know he's not here anymore, so I wasn't sure where this went or what was going to happen with it and when they were going to do it. We have to water about every 2 to 3 days, and our water is an issue. Right now, we can only really run one sprinkler. We can't have a hose on watering something else while we have the sprinkler, just because water pressure is a problem. So I didn't know if the line was going to be upgraded, if it's in the process of possibly happening, and if they know when it would happen, if we could find out when it would happen, and it wouldn't take too long to do, because we really can't go more than a couple days without water. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there for everybody. I also wanted to give an update on Rove and Ramble on the square. We're truly Rove and Rambling this year. It's been the first one was very successful, working with Valerie and the chamber to process permits and payments and that kind of stuff. We're kind of getting it streamlined, which is helping. So thank you to both of them for that. In the future, I was wondering if the city could put on their docket when they set up the fountain for that. If they could set up the drinking fountain in the center also, and do something with the outlets. That's always an issue as we get into it. I don't know if they turn the outlets on or off, but we're always having to call about the outlets and the street sweeper. If the street sweeper could come around in the spring, there's so much debris and stuff and all of that in the curbs and gutters and stuff, and I don't know what's involved to get the street sweeper up there at any time. Would be wonderful. We're doing a little bit differently this year, and we're doing more compact because of parking spaces with the restaurant opening, and everybody seemed to be really happy with the way we leave the north side and the south side of the square completely open, and just grouped them in more compact spots. And the bigger trucks, we don't have come up to the square anymore. We have them go to Five Points or Countryside when we have it there. So that seems to be working pretty well. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Still green, I'm good. Good to go. Madam Mayor, council persons, and staff, my name is Jim Bremner. I am the current Township Supervisor in Washington for one more week, and I'll be followed up with a very capable Jewel Ward, who is moving from clerk up to supervisor next Monday. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on our transportation issues. I left everybody a couple of sheets on what we have and what we're doing, and what we're doing is a joint venture, city and township. There's two services, the 65-plus service for seniors to go anywhere in the township for $3. And our board will likely approve an addition to that service next Monday. It's going to be on our agenda to, we've been experimenting with it 90 days to get seniors to Peoria and East Peoria for medical reasons. So if they have appointments or services or that they need, we'll take them to Peoria for $5, which is very reasonable, and I think it's a great service that we can build into our program. The whole idea between the disability and senior transit is to help resolve the stigma of isolation. You know, once people don't drive anymore, can't drive anymore, have a disability that prevents them from driving, or maybe lost a spouse who was the driver and they just can't drive, isolation sets in. So it's a proven fact that isolation is a major factor in on raising health costs and physical and mental costs for people that suffer from isolation. So that's our whole point, is to get people back into living again. A census shows here the city of Washington has 16% of the city of Washington is age 65 and over. Now, not all those people are not driving anymore, but that's our age here in town. In addition, 7% of the residents in the city of Washington have a disability of one sort or another. So the total of that's about 37, a little over 3,700 people if they were separate. Probably not close to that, probably 2,000 in reality. But that's still a pretty sizable part of our population that needs this service. The rise we provided in 2024 were a little over 2,500. So when you compare that to 2,000 people in need, we're doing a pretty darn good job of covering what we need to cover. As far as anything else on there, it's you have all the information. I just want to say that you should be as proud as we are, the township, of providing the service to a lot of our most needy residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other persons wishing to speak? All right. Next, oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name's Brad Marshall. I'm a citizen of Washington. I've lived my entire life here for 61 years. I wanted to speak on the residency requirement for chief of police. In my 61 years, 32 of those have been as a part-time or auxiliary officer with the police department. So I've seen many changes over the years. I'm not sure exactly when that requirement was put into city ordinance. However, with communication methods these days, with cell phones, computers, various other methods, even our dispatch center is remote. I honestly feel that as long as they live within a reasonable distance and can respond in a reasonable amount of time, there should not be a residency requirement for a chief of police who's appointed. They are not an elected official. As far as Jeff Stevens goes, I have worked with Jeff directly since 1993. He's been my supervisor in various capacities, and I have the utmost respect for his professionalism, and I feel he would be an excellent choice for our city and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard? Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have 2 minutes to approve. The first one is the Committee of the Whole, April 14th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second, McIntyre.
This will be voice vote. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The second minutes to be approved is the April 14th, 2025 budget public hearing minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Smith, motion to approve.
Second.
Again, voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Business items. Item A, residency requirements for the Chief of Police discussion. I would like to start this discussion by stating that it is my intent to name Jeff Stevens as the police chief. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Dennis for this agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor. We did a little group effort on putting the memo together for this. Instead of reading it in full depth here, I suspect everybody has had a chance to read it. But in doing so, I would also like to call up State's Attorney Kevin Johnson to discuss this item.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me this evening. First of all, I want to congratulate all the elected and re-elected officials on your election. We appreciate it. And when I say we, I say that for a reason, because I appear here tonight in front of you not only as State's Attorney of our county, but also a citizen of Washington for the past 30 years. Two of the things my wife and I were concerned with when we were deciding where to move back in 1994 was schools and safety. And that is primarily the reasons why we came to this city, and we haven't been let down on either front. I started with the State's Attorney's Office in 1987, and I've seen the change in law enforcement in our county as in terms of professionalism, and certainly Washington has been a big part of that. I've worked with all of the agencies, from the smallest to the largest within the county, of course, including Washington as well. And one consistent part of the City of Washington Police Department has been Jeff Stevens. I think, since 99, at least 25 years or so, I've known and worked with Jeff. He's been a very consistent part, and he's been a big part of the professionalism here in the city of Washington as far as training and other things go. I wouldn't rank Washington behind any of the law enforcement departments within Tazewell County. And I've always found Jeff to be, as you probably already know, a very hardworking, motivated, very intelligent officer. And one thing that I appreciate, especially in our business, is he even has a sense of humor. I'm not much of a social media person, but my wife forwards all of his Facebook posts to me, and I enjoy them as well. And that's an important part, in that he is a very social person and relates well to everyone. And that's not to say that we haven't had our differences. I think the chief will agree. We have had differences over 25 years. Everyone's going to have that. Although we're colleagues, we don't necessarily always work in lockstep. Sometimes my job is, and it's a hard job sometimes, is to tell them no. But Jeff has always been a very good advocate on behalf of not only his colleagues within the department, the women and men of the Washington Police Department, but also the citizens of Washington. And I've always appreciated and respected the fact that we can have these differences and disagreements and still have a great deal of respect and actually friendship for each other. So obviously, I was all in favor of his appointment to interim chief. And I'm certainly in favor of his appointment as the full-time permanent chief of police for all of those reasons. Anybody who's been part of any type of organization, no matter how big or small it is or what it's directed to, institutional knowledge and continuity is important. I can't even stress how important that is, especially within law enforcement. And Jeff certainly meets that criteria in that he's essentially devoted most of his adult life to the City of Washington and the City of Washington Police Department, and I think that's important to maintain that continuity and institutional knowledge. There would be no reason not to. Obviously, you must agree at some point because you named him interim chief, which I certainly agree with. So there's only seems to be one little fly in the ointment, and that is the 1991 ordinance requiring residency of the chief. Now, at the time, there might have been a very good reason for it. I think, as Mr. Marshall stated, a lot of things have changed since 1991. I can assure you, having started in 1987, many things have changed. As Mr. Marshall mentioned, communication, how we communicate, cell phones, through computer communication, FaceTime, whatever we need to do, we can do on a moment's notice, which wasn't true back in 1991. I can also assure you, both as state's attorney, any major incident here within the City of Washington, usually unfortunately involving loss of life, I am there, and I can assure you every time I've been there, Chief Stevens was there, either as, since I've known him for so long, either as patrol, investigation, sergeant, deputy chief, and I'm sure if it happened as chief, happened tonight or tomorrow, he would be there as well. Also important as a citizen, believe me, I've seen him plenty of time at all the events in Washington, you know, be it parades, sporting events, festivals, school events. So I think we need not worry about him being dedicated and committed and being here within our community. I can't imagine there's not a lot of people in our community who don't know him. So when we look at that ordinance, I don't know that it really is necessary at this point in time. And although you don't have to do what everybody else does, I do think it's important to note, as you've noted in the memo that was distributed as part of the agenda tonight, no one else around here really does that. There really is no residency requirement for chiefs of police, especially within communities of our size or greater. So it's not like you would be breaking any kind of new ground. In fact, you're one of the outliers who still kind of requires that. And again, that doesn't mean you have to do it as well, but I think there's a reason why most agencies have changed to not having a residency requirement or having some kind of adaptation of that requirement. So I do want to urge you tonight, as the mayor has already stated, she's considering appointing Jeff as permanent chief, which I wholeheartedly endorse, not only as state's attorney, but as a citizen of this city. But there's other things you can do. Obviously, you could amend that ordinance, as other agents or other communities have done, to make it so either by the mayor or the city administrator could give consent and approval to the chief not residing within the residency or within the city. I suppose you could even void it, and if you really thought it was necessary, you could make it a part of someone's contract, whatever you needed to do. But certainly in this case, I don't think that should be an impediment to you choosing who I believe is the best person for this job. So I thank you for your time, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer your questions. Even better.
Thank you very much. Every person on this council, there is no dispute that Interim Chief Stevens is well-respected and is right for the job. The only issue that people have brought up to me is this residency. So currently, and everybody was passed out the current, how it's phrased. So residents, the police chief shall reside within the city within 6 months of assuming the office of police chief. So really, the first question to me is, I would like to know if you wish to amend this current municipal code for the police chief.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah,
so I full-heartedly agree with everything the state's attorney has said and public opinion has said as well. I do believe that we should make amendment to this. As somebody who takes care of the communications for this county, that is 100% true. Things have changed significantly. From the second a phone calls received, the radio communication and ability to be on scene of an incident has changed dramatically since 1991. I think this is an outdated ordinance and does not really serve any purpose to us. Clearly, the person that we're discussing or talking about here tonight has proven more than anything. But again, I think maybe a future council might want to reconsider that. But I think it's a completely outdated concept. And the police departments and departments throughout the state require, good leadership, and good leadership has the values of the Washington PD, and so command doesn't need to be there immediately. He has other people here to serve in the moment. So just like the rest of the county, the sheriff doesn't live in the seat of the county. The sheriff responds to any call or large incident throughout the county. While he is required to live in the county, a little bit different here. I just do not see the purpose of it. If I were to put anything on it, if that was something that people want to continue to favor, I think you should extend it to either putting it to the discretion of the mayor or city administrator, and or a 30-minute or 30-mile from city center or something like that as a crow fly. But again, I think it's completely outdated. I would like to see it completely wiped away, but that's just my opinion. Again, there's sergeants and other personnel here that will secure the scene and make it possible for the chief to get here in a timely manner. And I think he's always proved that that's possible and has communicated that and continue to communicate to us and the city very appropriately.
thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes.
I would be in favor of amending the current residency requirement. I think he's very qualified, and I'm happy to see him fill this position. So whether we amend it or we just do away with it at this time, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, I think that amending it would be appropriate in this instance. I think amending it to something like, in the memo here, Pegan, where the city manager has the ability to authorize exception when approved by the city council. This instance, obviously, interim chief Stevens, I think, is the best person, the most qualified person, and the city would probably be underserved by not approving him to be the chief. But I'm not sure that the residency should be wiped away completely, just because this particular situation calls for an amendment.
Thank you. Anyone
Mayor?
else? Yes.
So I actually do think that an ordinance or a restriction such as this has some value, but is probably antiquated as it is today. I think it probably serves two purposes: community engagement and safety and response. I guess I would maybe propose for the group here to discuss or consider not wiping away the restriction completely, but maybe getting a little creative in terms of serving that first kind of facet of community engagement, of maybe requiring a police chief to reside in Washington unless there's been another threshold met, like service to the community. I think if you've had an individual who's patrolled our streets for 5 years, 10 years, whatever that number may be, that holds a significant value. That basically there's more than one way to be engaged with your community, whether that's living here, whether that's serving here. So I would propose that You know, if future councils were to hire a police chief who was from, you know, I look at this, the precedent was set here with the chief from Rockford, that we would want that person to move into our community, right? But in this instance, we have a great candidate who's served our community for a long time. So shouldn't those years of service check that box of community engagement? So possibly a consideration of years of service being a substitute for that residency requirement. And in terms of safety and response, the other facet that I mentioned, I think you've seen other communities have found that a certain radius works. And so I would be in favor of something like a 25-mile radius in combination with the previous kind of proposal that I set forth there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now, this is the question, if you wish to amend if you wish to amend the current municipal code.
Mayor.
Alderperson Blundy.
Okay. So, is there, I mean, it sounded like there were some other options presented where maybe we wouldn't even have to amend an ordinance here if we didn't want to. We could just give power to the mayor or city administrator and say, you could waive it. Or I guess we could vote to waive it or something. I mean, I absolutely support Interim Chief Stevens being our full-time chief. But if that's something we don't want to change this now, we could just do another quick option probably, right, to just waive that requirement and say, in this case, we're going to just waive it and move on. And then hopefully Jeff doesn't leave us anytime soon. But if he were, it's still there, you know, and it could come back and play again, I guess, at that time. And if it makes sense then to do something different, we could do it. But if it's easy enough just to waive it, then I'd say let's just waive it and move on.
I think that would require an amendment to the code itself, with whatever the stipulation is to disallow the residency itself. So I know it sounds like there's 5 here at least. I mean, we don't have to go through all 8 if we don't have to. But if we could get to the amendment portion of how do we want to amend it, is it as the crow flies? Is it supporting of an internal candidate then is kind of grandfathered in with their current residency? So if we can move to that portion of the amendment on how we want to amend it, so that way we kind of have some direction on that first reading, that would be great.
Alderperson Martin.
So I think when there's a position like this, it should be opened up for anyone to apply. That's what's best in business. I think it's good. There's pros and cons to that, going either way on that. I think if there was ever an exception, it's this one for Chief Stevens. I think I agree with what everybody said about, you know, him being good for this and put in his time and all that. But I think the amendment, I like the amendment that it says that the police chief be a resident of Washington, not just to be here for emergencies, but I think it's important for anyone that makes rules or enforces rules to have to live under those rules. So I think it's important for the chief to live in Washington. I prefer that. I would think everybody prefers that. You know, should we make an exception this time? I would rather not. I don't know if we're there yet to where we need to make an amendment or change an ordinance. So I guess my question is, has there been some sort of offer that's been made? Has Chief Stevens said he's not willing to move to Washington, that we need to do this? Like, why are we here right now?
Well, I will call upon Chief Stevens.
Thank you. There are significant costs. Let me go back to why I live where I do, which has been over 20 years ago. Worked here at the Washington Police Department. When I came here, the chief, Bill Whitmer at the time, encouraged me to not move to Washington. Brand new police officer, hey, don't move here, from the chief of police. And his explanation was that I got a family, kids, at that time on the way. He said that you don't want, in my case, my wife, my kids, to grow up with that kind of scrutiny. His example, I remember, was you don't want your wife at Kroger meeting somebody that you've encountered on the job and having them know who they are and potentially try to hurt me by hurting them. When we were going to have a second child and needed a bigger house, Chief Whitmer had that same conversation with me again. He even brought up knowing where my wife works, where she's worked for 30 years, 30 plus years, the Route 8 reconstruction. He says, if somebody's got to drive through that, it should be you, not her. A couple of decades later, I don't know that I would agree with that analysis, but I listened to him then. We found a modest house, maybe, I don't know, 13 to 15 miles from the city limit. Live there now. I don't have a lot of my primary mortgage left, but it's at 3%. If I sell my house, 5 to 6% commission. And while I don't have a plan to just up and leave, should I get this job, I know that I'm closer to the end of my career than I am to the beginning. And so I have to ask myself, just, is it financially sound to pay that many thousands of dollars to take a job? You know, should I do that to my family, to retirement plans, things like that? I'm torn because there's an awful lot that I feel like I can do here. An awful lot of frustrations over the years, things that I think I can contribute. But the decision really isn't all about me. It's about some financial security. Mr. Martin, you live here. Mm-hmm. You run a business, right? Mm-hmm. You employ a lot of people. You, that business, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax revenue. What part of Washington is it in?
Well, my store itself, I mean, we are in this AOR, but you're saying my store's not in Washington?
I don't know. I'm asking.
No, there's no store in Washington.
Okay. You dedicated to the city?
Yep.
So am I.
Right.
I live, really, I live under the same rules as everybody else. I do understand the feeling that you want the people to serve you, to live in the community. You want them dedicated. I am. I serve on county committees. I've represented Washington in the formation of TC3. Did an awful lot of that negotiation for the city of Washington. Councils over the years have entrusted me as far as voting for me as liquor commissioner, which is saying something when you've got a police officer acting as a liquor commissioner. I think I work well with residents. I think I work well with businesses to the extent that I'm allowed to do so. Over the years, obviously, I've represented either chiefs of police or another mayor. I consider myself a Washingtonian. I go to events. I encourage people to live in the city of Washington. Talked to two TC3 directors that came from out of the area. Told them they ought to live here. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. They live here. Mr. McIntyre, you were looking to move. Where did I tell you ought to live? Washington, Illinois. This is my town and I'm dedicated to it. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily need to make a poor financial decision, and particularly in 6 months, because I don't know if you've looked at the real estate listings. I have. My wife has. You might look and see there's a lot of houses for sale in Washington, but they're not really in Washington. And I'm sure as heck not going to move to East Peoria. So I've probably said more than enough. If there's something else that you need to know, please ask, and I'll answer as best I can.
Thank you, Chief Stevens. So the majority of the council wishes to amend the current ordinance. And according to the municipal code, the police chief shall be appointed by the mayor. I have made it known that that is my intention. So at this point, we need to talk about how this amended ordinance would look. Here's an example. For existing employees with 15-plus years of experience with the city of Washington to live within 25 miles of the city. How's that for a start?
I disagree.
Thank you.
I would support it.
I support it.
I also support it. Does that, I'm sorry, does that qualify him then? Is that, I don't know where he lives, so I'm just curious if that will qualify for?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderperson Johnson.
Yeah, I would support that also. And I guess I also have a question. If there's nothing that would preclude you from considering where a potential candidate lived, right, when you're looking to appoint someone. So if you had two candidates that were being considered and one lived in town and one didn't, I mean, there's nothing that would stop that from being part of the consideration, even if it's not in the ordinance.
That's true, but in this is a special situation. I mean, the chief has proven his dedication to Washington. This, I would never, if it was somebody from another community, I would never even consider asking anybody to even look at the residency. This is a totally, I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime situation. And I don't want to lose Chief Stevens. The department really needs this stability. He has the respect, he's got the professionalism needed, and again, he has proven his dedication. So again, it's, so far we've had, actually, let me ask this way. Who objects to the wording of, for existing employees with 15 years of service within the city of Washington to live within 25 miles of the city? So far we have one. Does anybody else object to this?
Can I comment on that, please?
Yes, Alderperson Martin.
So I agree. Nobody's questioning his dedication to the city. But if we're going to do a one-time exception, just like I think I wouldn't want to do an exception for any other position or city administrator, and all the other roles that it can't be, obviously, like alderman and mayor. But if it's going to be a one-time exception, I want it just to state this is a one-time exception, or that if the mayor or city administrator wants to make an exception with approval of the council, but I just want it to be an exception, not something, because what happens if Stevens retires this year or he gets a chief of Chicago, or like then where are we? You know, then does somebody else from some other place wants this job? Are we going to do that? Are we going to just let somebody live wherever they want? Or as a city administrator, can they live wherever they want? You know, like where does it stop? I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's just, I like it how it is. But I would want it to be a one-time exception. Sorry. Thanks.
Chief Stevens, I have a question. So we're just going to go hypotheticals here. Say you work for another 10 years. Do you feel like there's a person on your staff that 10 years from now would be as qualified to be the chief as you are?
10 years from now, absolutely. And I would say sooner than that. I've benefited hugely from staff development and a paradigm towards supervisor development, and I believe strongly in it. We've got a number of people that have been through, for example, Northwestern University School of Police Staff and Command. We got a guy that's completing the FBI National Academy right now, and people that are training in crisis response, mass violent event response, things like that. Absolutely, we're going to develop people that will be capable to lead this agency and others.
Because I would ask council to remember those thoughts and those gentlemen that he is hoping to retain. If you do look to amend the ordinance, it isn't just him, but it's also his staff that's currently underneath him that are looking at that same path forward that he has been. So just in general thought there.
One other thing I'd like to ask Chief Stevens is, I believe when this residency rule was put into place, it was to make sure the police chief, somebody in authority, is right there on the spot. Could you explain the chain of command as we have it now as compared to what it was before?
Yes. So when I came to Washington, we had one chief. Obviously, the city considered that one chief to be the only management person on the staff. The sergeants were supervisors, but not management. In fact, that was the reason that the sergeants were allowed to join the patrol officers union. Now, we had a sergeant on each shift, one sergeant, which meant 2 days a week, there was no supervision. That was normally Sunday and Monday. And so picture second shift, Sunday and Monday, you had your brand new officers because you bid for shifts, and no sergeant on duty. Now, we have 24/7 supervision. We do not schedule a shift without a managerial supervisor, whether that's one of the 6 sergeants, or whether that's a chief or a deputy chief. There is a management supervisor on duty. There is also enshrined in our rules, chain of command. You know, there are times, by the way, we have 2 sergeants on duty, as well as maybe a chief or a deputy chief. But something horrific happens, you've got a, sergeant that's disabled or for whatever reason cannot continue in command. We have a written progression that every officer is supposed to understand about who takes command and what happens.
Thank you. Even though this is what precipitated this proposed change in municipal code, I'm not comfortable with changing the municipal code for just one person, even as special as you are. That's why I think this statement for existing employees with 15-plus years of service with the City of Washington, living within 25 miles of the city, it's been pointed out that our code is antiquated compared to other communities. If you read the memo, there are various reasons that support this. So I guess that's where we're at now.
Ms. Mayor.
Alderperson McIntyre.
So I think, and I agree, Bobby, I understand your concern with it, and I don't disagree that there's not a concern. I do think we should make the amendment to put the 15 years and the 20 or 30 miles. Again, I spoke on that earlier. Succession planning is really important in law enforcement. It really develops the integrity of the department, and I believe when Chief McCoy got here, you know, there was a big transition happening, and I think over those last 8 years and building up Chief Deputy Stevens to chief now is a prime example of one of those situations. And I think that's where if we make an amendment to this and we do put that language in there, at the end of the day, the mayor makes the appointment. The city council will be approving this no matter what. So to my thought process is, it gives us opportunity to build up officers in our department. That also makes it intriguing for them to be part of this community, be part of this department, want to stay long-term for us. As Chief spoke just the last week, you know, of being very proud of this department and where they've been in the last 8 years. We have a waiting list. We are fully staffed. All those things are really important concepts, and I think allowing this to move forward and having this type of change in there also provides that commitment to our police department that we are forethought and making sure that succession planning can't happen. I think, again, I don't think there's anyone up here that disagrees that Chief Stevens is not the proper decision. And I think it's important that he has to make decisions based on his finances and stuff like that. Now is not a time to be buying or selling a house. It's not an outrageous length of where he lives to this city. He's clearly committed. And I think anyone who would work for our community for that many years would also be committed as well. So I would fully support the 15 years of service plus some type of resident or some like 30 miles from, you know, from a crow fly or however it works. Again, I think that protects us, it provides us with stability, and it allows us to form the officers to continue to have a great town that's been protected the way it has been for the last several decades.
Thank you. All right, let's take a quick straw poll for the existing employees with 15 years of service living within 25 miles of the city. And again, this then would be developed into an ordinance. There would be a first reading, a second reading. This isn't the only discussion that we'll have on this topic. This is just a straw poll to see whether, how you feel about moving forward with this amendment. So let's start with Ward 1. Alderperson Johnson.
I would be in favor. Can I ask a question, please, Mayor?
Yes.
So we're saying however many miles for somebody with 15 years of experience. What if it's an external candidate? Are we going to require them to live in Washington or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is for existing employees,
Okay.
external candidates.
All right, great. Yes, I'm in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Sluter.
I'd be in favor of it, just comprehending everything, a lot of discussion. This is great. Yeah, I like that question, Paula, that you said. I just look at it as like, man, I got a lot of thoughts in my head.
Well, and you know, you'll have time to think more about this because the purpose of this is, I think we all like the code of the police chief living in the city of Washington, but yet we know from experience that we have a dedicated employee who does not live in the city of Washington and is proven can do the job, but yet we leave that open for promoting other people from within.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the things that were being said. It's important to have a culture and to keep the culture going. If things are thriving within the culture of the department, I'm not part of that department in a way, but that's a key ingredient for success in developing as being part of a business and a culture with what I do in the industry. It's important. So we're moving the miles back. Is that what that would be a part of? Like what you're saying, miles in the residency?
It would be, the person would have to live within 25 miles of the city.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Alderperson Smith.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Alderperson Ernst?
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yes.
So this would be like a blanket amendment for any incoming or any chief hiring after Stevens, correct? I mean, without the approval of the council?
Oh, no. The municipal code states the police chief shall be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the city council. So any appointment, I would appoint somebody and then the council would vote. You're the final say of the vote.
Correct. Okay, so it wouldn't, I would still say, I think I'm in favor of just a case-by-case basis of, the council approving a waiver, for lack of a better word. I'm not sure that it should be changed completely for all future hires.
Okay. Alderperson Moss?
I'm in agreement.
Thank you. Alderperson Martin?
As of right now, I'm a no.
Alderperson Blundy?
Yep, I'm good.
And Alderperson McIntyre?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a direction? Okay, thank you. Moving on. The water rate project plan discussion. I want to emphasize that this discussion, basically, it's the way I see this tonight is informational. The council persons who have already been on the council have seen this presentation. This is for the new members to be introduced to this topic. We will discuss this further at a different meeting. This is not the only time you will see this. This is basically an introduction. So if you have questions, if you have specific items on this presentation that you would like to know more about, jot them down, and we'll let our city administrator know for further discussion. So this basically is, we're going to have the presentation and move on. Thank you.
Okay, like the mayor said, we've done this presentation before for the previous council members, but we're very happy to be presenting it to the new council members to provide them the information, then give some more details for some of the projects for the council members that were reelected. Just there. It's not. It's a PowerPoint, I think. Okay, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the existing potable water system for the city of Washington includes 2 pressure zones. You have a low pressure zone on the east side of town that has a water treatment plant number 1 that was built in 1960. It also includes a water tower that's just shy of 500,000 gallons. And then you have a high pressure zone on the west side of town with water treatment plant number 2 that was built in 1992. And that also has a water tower that's just shy of 500,000 gallons. Now your entire system includes a water distribution pipe network that includes about 85 miles of piping that range in size from 4 inches to 16 inches in diameter. Now it's important to note that about 30% of the piping is at or over 100 years old. And then also of the 85 miles, about less than a third of the piping is made of cast iron, but cast iron does include about 2/3 of the water main breaks that your city staff respond to. Your system as a whole also serves about 5,400 customers in the city of Washington. Throughout the years, the city staff has done a great job in investing in your water system. A couple years ago, you extended water main piping so that water treatment plant number 2 in the high pressure zone is now connected to the distribution system in 2 spots, so that if a water main break should fail, you still protects the citizens to still have access to water. And currently this year, under construction, you have chlorination improvement projects at water treatment plant number 1 in the low pressure zone, so that your entire system is being treated in the same way. That construction will be complete in a couple of months. We do recognize that the costs to maintain the system and for the improvements that we'll talk about are high, especially for some of the projects. However, you guys maintain such great water quality to your citizens, and it is a more complex system, so we truly believe that it's a great investment for all of the projects that we'll go through. If you could hit the next slide. So we're going to talk about 6 different projects that we have talked in length with city staff, reviewed IEPA project plans, and then came up with our recommendation of the improvements be taken within the next 5 to 10 years. You could hit the next slide, please. So the first project is Bondurant Street Water Main Replacement Project. This includes replacing just shy of 700 feet of 4-inch water main that's on Bondurant Street from Route 24 to Jefferson. The driver behind this project is that the 4-inch water main that's currently there is past its life expectancy and sees a lot of water main breaks. Now, this 4-inch water main also serves a critical facility, which is the Washington High School. So I know in talks with the city, they have expressed that in the past, water main breaks have impacted after-school activities through cancellations or delays. So a new 8-inch water main is proposed along the street to alleviate that problem. Now, the estimated construction cost is about $375,000. You hit the next slide, please. The next project is Route 24 water main relocation. This project includes about 20,000 linear feet of relocating water main along Route 24 from Legion Road to Lynn Street to be, instead of inside pavement limits, to outside pavement limits. This would also include reconnecting about 180 service connections and completing about 38 connections to existing water mains. The main driver for this project is IDOT. IDOT does have plans for major road reconstruction along Route 24, and they have reached out to the city to request that you move your water main from inside the pavement to outside the pavement. Once we discussed with city staff, we did identify a critical length of Route 24 where you'll see older water main that has more breaks to it, and that would be from Wilmore Road to Lynn Street. So the estimated construction costs for the entire length is about $7.7 million, and then just looking at that critical length would be about $4.5 million. Next slide, please. The next project is Water Tower number 3. This project would consist of a new elevated water tower, about 500,000 gallons in storage at the intersection of Kruger Road and Knopfsinger Road. This project would also require upsizing the 8-inch water main on Cummings Lane to a 12-inch water main, which is also by Water Treatment Plant number 2, to help with that construction of the water tower. Now, the driver for this project is multiple. The first one being that the city does not currently meet ISSO fire flow recommendations, which is having a minimum storage equal to the highest flow for 3 hours. The city's highest flow is 3,500 gallons per minute, which equals 630,000 total gallons. Now, Water Tower 2's capacity is only 450,000 gallons. This means that if there is a significant fire in the city of Washington in the high pressure zone, the city would not be able to provide enough water to the fire department. There's a possibility that they would not be able to provide enough water to the fire department to combat that fire. The second driver is that the city does not currently meet IEPA Title 35 minimum storage, even for communities that don't provide fire flow. Their recommendation is a minimum storage equal to the daily consumption. Now, the city's total daily consumption across both pressure zones is 1.1 million gallons per day, and the city's total storage is about 0.9 million gallons per day. If we just look at the high pressure zone, which is where tower number 3 is proposed, and that treatment plant number 2 serves, their average daily consumption is about 0.57 million gallons per day. Tower 2 only holds 0.45 million gallons per day. So if there is a critical failure at treatment plant 2, you would only be able to serve your residents for less than a day. the addition of tower number 3 would allow you to serve them for longer than a day. And then we do have the third added bonus of tower number 3 allows the fire hydrants in the area to have a higher pressure. It's our understanding that although the city of Washington has never had to tell their fire department that they have to stop pumping water, they have had to tell them that they need to move fire hydrants due to the pressure drop. So having tower number 3 would also help with that concern. The estimated construction cost for the tower itself is about $4.3 million, and then you have to add about $500,000 for the upsizing of the water main along Cummings Lane. Next slide, please. The next project is Sunnyland Water Service Redundancy. This project would include about 4,000 feet of new 8-inch diameter water main that's along School Street and Centennial Drive. And the driver for this project is that all of Sunnyland is currently served by the city of Washington, but on one 10-inch water main. If there is a failure on that 10-inch water main, Sunnyland will be without water until that failure could be reconstructed. This allows for redundancy in the system so that they have 2 connection points to the city of Washington's water system. The estimated project construction cost is $875,000. Next slide, please. Next project is Southeast Area Water Main Improvements. This includes the southeast area of the city of Washington, which you'll see the oldest piping that's over 100 years old. You'll also see the most cast iron. As I stated, it has an average of 2/3 of the water main breaks. So this project would include the replacement of about 17,000 linear feet of 4-inch diameter water main with new water main. It would also include reconnecting a little less than 300 service connections. Due to the size of this project, we would recommend splitting it up into multiple projects over a 20-year period, slowly chipping away at the amount of 4-inch diameter water main that you have out there. Next slide, please. The last project is Well 13. Well 13 is the proposed new well that would include a 20 by 15 foot block building that would sit on top of a submersible pump that's about 420 feet deep with an 8-inch diameter steel column. You would connect that to your raw water line that would connect to water treatment plant number 2 in your high pressure zone. The driver for this project is that currently treatment plant number 2 is served by wells 11 and 12, which is located at the Public Works building and where well number 13 is proposed as well. However, if the city sees another failure with those pumps, then the city would be without water. There are backup wells right now, number 9 and number 10, which is located at the plant, are very high in ammonia due to the aquifer that's there. So well 13 would be a much more reliable backup should you see another failure. Well 13 also has an added benefit after that it increases the treatment capacity of treatment plant number 2 from 1.5 million gallons a day to 2.0 million gallons a day, should you see any further development in the future. The estimated project construction cost is $1.5 million. So of the projects we discussed, Route 24 and the Southeast Area Planning water main replacements would be your long-term projects ranging from 5 to 10 years. And then all the other projects would be recommended for the next 1 to 5 years. So we'll answer any quick questions, otherwise reaching out to Dennis, and then if he has any more information that we can provide him, we'd be more than happy to.
Thank you. And Dennis?
Yes, thank you, Abby, and Scott for making your appearance here. In general, before we get going on the rate stuff here, truly there's 2 ways to look at any potential talk here on future rates, and those can be brought up at a later date. It's whether we want to target just years 1 through 5, or if we're wanting to stretch it until year 10 right now. They're very different looks, very different increases and stuff like that. So just something to think about, weigh on. Feel free, shoot that recommendation over. We can have conversations moving forward about that. But outside of that, I mean, if there's any quick questions.
I have one quick question, Mayor.
Alderperson Martin.
Do you know offhand, like on Bondurant Street, the water main, like how many times we've had to work on that water main in the last like 30 years? 25 years? Would you know that? Ballpark?
I can get that answer for you.
Okay. I just want to know if it's like over 20.
It is not over 20.
The mention was about the water rates. I think we need to clarify too, when the former council saw this item, it was a 9% rate increase, but now that that didn't pass, starting with the starting with the June bill, your May water usage, that has increased by how much percent?
5.2% was the increase based on the CPI. So that's already taken, I mean, it's already in effect, but it will be shown on the June 1st bills.
Yes, so that, I want the community to understand that without any of this being approved, everybody is seeing a 5.2% increase. That leaves, if these projects were being financed as presented, that's an additional 3% increase. Could you maybe expand on that?
Sure. Yes, the current ordinance indicates that the rates are increased by, it's the water, sewer, and trash CPI. So it's not like the regular CPI you might hear about. Water, sewer, trash is typically higher. So that was 5.2% for 2024. So those rates will be increased effective with the June 1 bill. And the proposal that was discussed last month, I guess, is a 9% increase, and that includes that 5.2. So it's a total of 9, not an additional 9. And of course, there's some other proposals in regards to the infrastructure fixed fee. But as far as the rate goes, it would be an additional, I guess, 3.8% on top of that 5.2 to get to the 9.
The other part of that proposal was to structure the meter cost, so the infrastructure fee based off of the meter size. So the properties that have larger water meters would then be charged a larger infrastructure fee per month. And that increase, I believe we had equated to about a 2.5% raise.
Once again, this conversation will continue to occur. This was just an introduction to the newly elected for these projects that are proposed. All right, moving on, square parking update, and that would be John.
Thank you, Mayor. So briefly, everyone is aware Tangled Roots opened about a month or so ago. As staff, we fielded several questions and comments from not only business owners around the square, but residents that were coming to the area maybe for the first time ever. These are good problems. Certainly the questions that we were getting were probably within the first couple of weeks. Those have slowly dissipated, I think, as people have gotten used to it. But seeing as how our most recent on and off-street parking regulations were approved by the council back in 2002, we felt like now would be a good time to at least start the discussion on whether any other changes should occur with regards to city code and those parking spaces that would be within the public's realm. And so very briefly, I'll just go through my memo referring to the existing regulations for the city-owned spaces. For the on-street spaces, there is a single 15-minute space that is delineated on the north side, on the west side of North Main between the hours of 5 and 10 p.m. There are 8 different 30-minute spaces around the square at different places, and those have restrictions between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. There are also 3 different restricted parking areas. Restricted parking area 1 refers to each of the different on-street spaces, and those have 4-hour consecutive maximum time limits other than Sundays and holidays. And the restricted parking area 2 and 3 restrictions are in place for a handful of different off-street parking spaces. Of note, the restricting parking area 3 refers specifically to those spaces that are on the east side of the Lindy's building, and that is only in effect between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. As indicated, we've had a number of discussions with different folks around the square, and when we broached this topic with some of those business owners, as staff, we said that if we were going to be bringing someone to the council, which our desire was to at least have this initial discussion this evening, was to have a joint recommendation. That as staff, we wanted to support whatever the recommendation of those different business owners would be, because ultimately they are the ones that are affected. They're the ones that has a livelihood that is dependent upon being able to have people come safely to and from the square. So included in the memo are a number of different bullet points on things to consider. Just starting at the top would be the kind of the lowest hanging fruit of all those would be to eliminate the 104 Zinzer and 105 North High lots from any restrictions. Neither of those are currently owned or leased by the city. Therefore, the city should not have any restrictions on properties that are purely privately owned. Next would be to add the city-owned lots at 104 South High and 105 South High to the restricted parking area 2 lots. Those are the 2 most recent parking lots that have been purchased by the city to the kind of southeast of the square, north of the post office, and then on the other side of the street. And then kind of rearranging the allocation of the 15 and 30-minute spaces, whereas with the 15-minute spaces would look to have 2 spaces in front of Fair Coffee. One of those would be to delineate more specifically that the space would be for Fair Coffee customers for carryout orders. There are already 2 such signs there that were placed there around the time when COVID started. Another one would be in front of Tangled Roots. However, since this memo was drafted and sent out with the packets late last week, Tangled Roots has now indicated that they do not feel like they need such a space there, so please eliminate that from consideration as for what is indicated in the memo. And then the only other 15-minute space would be to allocate 1 in front of Ipava State Bank on the far east side of the south side. The 2 30-minute spaces that we would look for, again, as a recommendation, would be to have 1 space in front of the Bent Penny on the west side of the far south side of the square, and then another in front of the Maloof Realty / former Foster Jewelry building on the west side of North Main. Included in the packet are several different maps that kind of delineate all this, a single map showing the recommended spaces, and then a handful of other maps showing what is currently delineated per city code. This is intended to be kind of a very initial kickoff. Would really look for more feedback at the June committee of the whole meeting, but certainly if there are any questions or comments, would be more than happy to take them now.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, Alderperson Smith.
Is anyone going to be policing these limited parking spots?
That is the challenge, and if Chief Stevens wants to weigh in on that, he can, but that is obviously one thing you'd have to weigh in mind when having any kind of parking restrictions is the challenge in enforcement.
For the most part, you get voluntary compliance, and I'll give you the example. If you drive through the square, there are a couple of unauthorized signs, and you see those spots are open. That's just people being polite. You mostly get voluntary compliance. In the past, when there were complaints, the police department would go up and chalk tires. You put a chalk mark on the tire. You go back, 30 minutes later or whatever the limit is and see if the car's moved. You can't do that anymore. And so you need a different enforcement mechanism. So you can take photographs, whatever. It's fairly labor intensive unless you get an automated system, which is fairly expensive. In short, yeah, we can do enforcement but it's going to be driven by perceived need, whether Chris or somebody else gives us a call, or we have an officer that just notices that there's a car there all the time.
I would like to note that, as John said, this is an initial discussion. We are going to discuss this further at the June Committee of the Whole meeting, and also in the memo that the Washington Specialty Shops, and they have discussed this with the city, and they jointly recommend that we consider this information here. So, moving on to item D.
Mayor, I would like to ask a question on this, if I could, please.
Alderperson Martin.
On the High Street, where we still have that parking lot over there, that we got that land, has there been anything more of us making more parking there? If that would alleviate this? Because there's been considerable more traffic on the square since Tangled Roots.
To clarify, Alderperson Martin, are you referring to the back half of the 107 South High?
Yes.
Lot? Okay. We haven't had any other discussions on that internally or externally with the council, but certainly if there is a desire to consider that, we could explore more and bring that before the council for further consideration.
All right, thank you.
Mayor,
Alderperson Blundy.
I just had a couple questions, maybe a thought on this. So I haven't paid too much attention to the signage up there, but are signs like color coded now by like 15-minute, 30-minute, 2 hours, or are they just a blank sign that just states on there, or how do they look?
We have, I don't know if every one of the 30-minute spaces is delineated. I know specifically we do not have a sign in front of the Historical Society building. There is a 30-minute space there currently. We do have other 30-minute spaces, space signs. And then I think the 15-minute sign is there in front of the Foster's building. I know there are a handful of 4-hour signs around the square as well.
But do they all look the same, or are they different colors?
They all look the same as far as I know. And I'm not educated as well as Dennis or Brian or maybe even Chief on whether we should be differentiating that, whether that would violate MUTCD signage guidelines.
The signs just need to follow the manual and uniform traffic control devices so that everybody recognizes them regardless of, what city they show up in. They know what a limitation sign is supposed to look like. And some of the signs are missing. There have been discussions going back even before Brian was here, back to Kevin or Bill Bimrose about should we update those signs to match the ordinance. And the discussion was usually pushed down the road to, you've got to update the parking map. For example, some of the short-term parking was actually put in place for the liquor store on the square. The one that's not there? So, yeah, please update the map. Thanks.
Okay. Well, that's what I was just saying. I didn't know if that was possible or not, but I was thinking if people got used to, like, they always saw, an orange sign was 15 minutes and green was 30 or whatever, that may be helpful. And then I think it's down by maybe Hollins, or there's like a sign that goes into the city parking lot, I think. And again, I haven't paid enough attention up there. But if I remember the last time I think I paid attention to that sign, it didn't maybe look real attractive. And so maybe if we could think about that too for the June, maybe getting new signage up there too, and then doing maybe more modern things like putting a QR code on it or something so someone could scan their phone and it would kind of show all these parking places around, and maybe give them some guidance to where they should park or could park, depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion, and certainly one that we have thought about going back a handful of years, back to when the streetscape design was initiated, 6-7 years ago, however long it's been, about having a kiosk or maybe even a couple of kiosks that would give information on parking, the different businesses, other information as would be pertinent for the square. Mayor, if I can mention one more thing too. So just to make the council aware, IDOT has at least preliminarily indicated that they're looking at another resurfacing of Business 24 from where it terminated to the west of the viaduct on east to the edge of the city limits. And at the current time, that would include the removal of a single parking spot on both the north and south sides of the square. So we don't have a firm indication as to when that work may begin, but we've kind of been led to believe that it could happen at least sometime this year. So something else to keep in mind as it relates to the availability of parking around the square.
And that would mean a crosswalk on the north side and the south side from the sidewalk into the square, correct?
Correct, yeah. That would be intended to improve the pedestrian crossing to the square to have a little bit less of a crossing distance to get to the interior part of the square.
And this is because IDOT controls that roadway.
Correct.
And what was the anticipated time? Did you think that that would start?
I'll let Dennis try to answer that.
It sounded like they were targeting a summer to fall, but that was kind of the same thing they were targeting last year, and it ended up being late fall. So I'd like to say it's going to be this year, but I can't promise anything.
Okay, and it's IDOT.
Yes, it is IDOT's work.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Mayor, could I just ask one more?
Yes.
In working up there, is there any handicap parking spots on the square for the Tangled Roots or any of the businesses?
We do have some. I didn't do a deep dive into that to tell you exactly where they're at, but I know we do have at least a few. I'm hesitant to offer exact locations without noting where they are for sure, but there are at least a few around the square.
Are we required to have a certain number of handicapped spots?
We are. The state accessibility code regulates that for both what we have in the public realm and what private property owners are required to provide.
And is that enforced, or should we be looking at that?
We, as far as I know, meet those guidelines. I'm pretty confident in saying that, but again, we have not done a deep dive to see where that is in relation to the number of overall parking spaces that we have currently around the square.
So when we have this discussion in June, maybe we can get a little more information on that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item D, alderpersons and mayor term limits discussion. Again, John Oliphant.
Thank you again, Mayor. So briefly, the prior council had some prior discussions on the idea of having term limits for both the alderpersons as well as the mayor. The most recent draft ordinance is attached with the memo, and it was tabled at the February 17th council meeting with the desire to bring it back to the May Committee of the Whole meeting with the seating of the new council. So in essence, the draft ordinance that is before you for possible further consideration would set a maximum cumulative of 3 elected 4-year terms. Any alderperson or mayor could serve the remainder of any prior term without affecting the 3 4-year terms, but that would be the maximum as set by the current draft ordinance. And so with that, would open it up for any questions or comments.
Mayor?
Alderperson Smith?
I was wondering if anyone would just consider the mayor 3-term limit and leave the alderperson just as is. I didn't know if anyone would be interested or if we should just move on from this completely.
Mayor?
Alderperson Blondie?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly support that as well for the mayor, but for me personally, I think 3 elected 4-year terms, 12 years for any one person to sit probably in any of these seats is a long time. I can certainly appreciate anybody that wants to do it longer, but I think in my mind, 12 years is enough, and I think we need to encourage more turnover and get, I certainly can appreciate the comment too, not everyone wants to do this, but I think if we kind of force seats to come open, that'll get more people involved, and I think the more people involved, the better. I know after 12 years, if I was sitting here that long, I'm personally going to become stale. I'm going to run out of ideas. People get tired of listening to me anyway. So for me personally, I would I would like to see this passed is 3 elected 4-year terms, and if a future council disagrees with that, they can always change their mind and reverse it.
Mayor?
Alderperson Moss.
I would weigh in that, we just came off an election with 3 out of 4 wards, essentially uncontested. So I think I might be able to get behind the mayor seat having a limit, but as long as we have a lack of perceived interest here in alderman seats, it's kind of I would even venture to say almost a silly thing to be considering. So.
Alderperson McIntyre.
Yeah, I would echo that as well as what Brandon, Mr. Moss said. As a person that originally supported this concept, I think for the mayor position, it's a more sought-after position. I could respect a 12-year on that. But as far as the rest of us, I had asked somebody and tried to find interest in filling my spot. I was happy to run again and happy to be reelected. But as suspected, we, again, just didn't have the people turn out to do this. So I don't think restricting somebody's ability to serve or serve our community should be restricted by a time frame. At this point, I just don't. If we had every contested race, I would 100% be on board, but we're not sitting there right now.
Alderperson Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. I did agree with this. I like the idea for us to consider, but like what everybody said with how little interest we had, and I think I feel really strongly about term limits on like the federal level, but this level it's a little different, and we can actually vote out people if we need them to. That's more realistic. I think if we're going to move forward with this, we should put it on the ballot for the residents to decide.
Mr. Mayor, or Miss Mayor, geez, wow, sorry. Just not getting used to that, apologize.
Before I call on you, Alderperson Martin, as far as the being on the ballot, there are, there are time frames to do that. So I think this ordinance, unless we just don't do anything, and so far we've got 4 people wanting just the mayor. And I suppose when it comes time to the next election, you can bring this up for it to be on the referendum, but I think it's almost like apples and oranges at this point to talk about that. So, Alderperson McIntyre?
No, I'm just going to defer. I like that concept to get her, give us that, but I agree that it's not something we'd be talking about now. Put it out there for the public to put a voice on it. I think they might see it similar to us, that the alderpersons are not as interested in, but may want, more of a term limit on mayor. But I would like to see what the public has to say about it.
Anyone from this side of the room?
I would agree with that. I would say more so with the public to be able to decide that. I do like the idea of a term limit on the mayor side of things, but alderpersons, besides a few of us only running against each other, it's kind of, at this point, I mean, looking for good candidates to do it. I agree with what's been said, so that's what I would say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5, so that's a majority that are interested in just the mayor with a 3-term limit. And then as far as a referendum goes, we can talk about that when it comes closer to another election for public input.
I would share on this item that since the election just passed, this doesn't affect anybody until 2 years from now during that election. So while we're not necessarily in a hurry, if you were wanting to wait for the referendum, that would definitely fall in the same time frame of making this active as it would if we just passed it now.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, E, May PZC meeting recap. John.
Thank you once again, Mayor. So just providing a quick update on a number of cases that the Planning and Zoning Commission heard at their meeting last week, all of which will be coming to the council at some point in the near future. 4 of the 6 cases involve special use requests for what are referred to as non-owner occupied short-term rentals for residential properties. And those addresses are at 1406 Westgate, 132 through 134 North Main A and B, 711 South High, and 406 North Main. As you may be aware, the council adopted short-term rental regulations late last year to provide kind of an underlying set of rules and regs for those short-term rental units that we knew were already operating within the city limits, trying to make sure they were put on an even playing field with other similar types of businesses, most notably hotels and motels, and to try to ensure, at least to the best means possible, that they were not going to be detrimental to areas that are largely residential in nature. And so the 4 that will be coming to the council with first readings next week are all required to receive special use approval. Assuming approval a year from that point, and assuming those same operators are continuing to operate the STR, they would have to apply administratively for what is called a certificate of registration, which essentially just attests that the owner continues to abide by the rules that are in effect at the time. So each of those 4 were unanimously recommended by the PZC, and we'll have first readings for each of those next week.
I would like.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would like to add that the Planning and Zoning Commission, there are 7 members of that commission. 4 members were present for this meeting. Also, as we heard our speaker earlier about the chickens, so if you look at the memo on the second part, any part of this, the council, you can amend it to change the any parts of this. And I think that's what, John, you explained to the Planning and Zoning Committee, that commission, that they could also do that, but they seemed a bit reluctant because it was almost like they felt like the council was the group that would do that.
Yeah, I'll jump ahead since you mentioned that one, Mayor. So the residential chickens ordinance, the brief history, you may also be aware, the council had originally adopted residential poultry regulations back in 2019. They were repealed just shy of a year after that point, and we have not had any such regulations after that point. The council earlier in the year expressed interest in having a discussion on it, and there was enough of a consensus at that point to move ahead with the drafting of an ordinance. The majority of the regulations that are as a part of the draft ordinance right now that went to the PZC were the regulations that were in effect as of about 5 years ago before they were repealed. We did make some modifications based on some discussion at the council level, as well as what I thought may be the most palatable. With that said, it certainly would not break my heart if you wanted to make any changes to it. Let me make that extremely clear. I have no pride in authorship on this whatsoever. But in essence, and one of the speakers in the audience tonight, Mr. Spitzer, mentioned the proposed maximum lot size, or I'm sorry, the minimum lot size that would be required for residential chickens. The ordinance that was in effect 5 years ago did not have a minimum lot size. This one does. It has a minimum lot size of 3/4 of an acre. If you wanted to reduce that, you would certainly be within your purview to do that if there is a desire to have the allowance for residential chickens. But as it stands within the draft ordinance that will come to the council, barring suggested changes that you would like to see in that, it has a 3/4 of an acre minimum. Certainly, I think it does stand a reason to maybe consider reducing that if there is an overarching desire to have chickens, or at least allow for more residents to allow for the opportunity to have chickens. But the thinking behind having a slightly larger minimum lot size was to kind of put a toe in the water on this initially and see how it went before potentially increasing that minimum lot size to something less than 3/4 of an acre. Any questions or comments on that before I mention the last item?
I have one.
Alderperson Smith.
Is there anything written in there about contacting neighbors before applying for this, are we not doing, would that not apply?
It's not in the draft ordinance as we speak. It's not to say that you couldn't do that. I would be more in favor of doing that than having a special use process. So if there was a desire to get resident sign-offs on these, I think that would be a better way. With that being noted, I think you would still encounter some of the issues that I thought we saw with the first version of residential chickens in the city, is that you may get some neighboring objections that have absolutely nothing to do with the desire to have chickens on the neighboring property.
Mayor.
Alderperson McIntyre?
I guess I'm also of the opinion that lot size shouldn't matter really. While I agree that, you know, there's some importance to it, does that affect the, I believe there was talk about the offset from the property or fence or anything like that. If it's a smaller property, would that have to change as well then, or how would that work? 'Cause originally I was completely against this concept, but I have a wife, and so I'm no longer against this concept.
So as currently drafted, there would be a 15-foot side yard setback and a 25-foot rear yard setback. That would certainly rule out some properties, some of the smaller properties that couldn't meet that. By and large, even with the 15-foot side yard setback on either side, most lots in the city would be wide enough to be able to fit a smaller coop within each of those setbacks. So I don't think you would rule out too many, by and large.
Well, I have a comment on this too, if it's the right time.
Alderperson Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would agree. I think the setback is more important, and the distance from another house is more important than lot size. So I would be in favor of having the smaller lot size and focus more on the setbacks. That being said, if I would rather this pass. So if we have to do it, start up here and move down, I'm okay with that. But if everybody's on board, I think we should at least go down to the half acre or less, or at least have a way for somebody to prove a unique situation of I'm the only one out here, but my lot size is small, or something like that. Thank you.
All right. That's several people with the elimination of the lot size.
Yeah, is that kind of the desire to eliminate it or reduce it?
I see nodding heads, so the answer is yes.
To eliminate it altogether?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Enough yeses?
Yes, I see.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we will incorporate that change and bring that back.
All right.
And Ms. Mayor, if I can, the last item that I had in that, sorry, there is a rezoning request from Brent Ricketts of Ricketts Properties LLC to rezone Mallard Crossing Commercial Park Lot 5 from C2, which is the general retail district, to C3, which is service retail. Lot 5 is the property immediately to the east of Sleep Inn with access directly off of Kruger. It's about 1 1/3 acres. The property has changed zonings a few times over the years and has previously been zoned C3. Mr. Ricketts has a person who has proposed leasing the property in order to do outdoor merchandise sales, most notably the sale of storage sheds, chicken coops, ironically, and deer blinds. So such sales are only allowed in the C3 district, not in the C2. So that is the reason behind the rezoning. Staff supports the request, and the PZC also recommended approval of it.
And may I add, the same person's requested the zoning change, and like you said, it was originally C3, and now they're requesting it back to the original, so it's kind of...
It's kind of come full circle.
Yeah, full circle.
The last thing I would note too, and not in my memo, but an item we do plan on, actually 2 items we do plan on having for next week's agenda are a very minor annexation and a very minor disconnection ordinance. And I mentioned this, I think, to the new council members when we were doing the new council orientation. By state law, anytime there is an annexation, or as the opposite would hold, a disconnection from the city limits, that needs to be approved by the city council. And so this involves 2 properties owned by Weenus Trucking, the property that's currently outside the city, and a small parcel owned by Grace Bible Church that is in the city. And to fix a land error between those two owners that goes back many, many years, they had submitted previously a plat of survey for each of those to do a land swap between the two. I noted to each of the owners at the time that because those properties, you had one that was in the city, one outside, I could not approve it administratively until the council formally approved both the annexation and disconnection. So the ordinances that'll be on the agenda for next week's council meeting as first readings will reflect that. They're both very small. I want to say each are less than 1/10 of an acre, but I don't have the ability to sign off on that administratively until the council does.
Thank you. All right,
Mayor.
moving.
It's over here.
Oh, Alderperson Blondie.
Just one question on that, John, with this outdoor merchandise sales. I guess, is there anything that regulates, and I hate saying it this way, but like the look of it or what can be put out there? Because I'm just not sure, if you have sheds, chicken coops, deer blinds, and I'm not picking on this particular business here, but is there something that would regulate like what you can come out there so it just doesn't maybe look like a, I hate even saying it, but something that would put some kind of regulation around that where you can't just throw mass piles of anything out there and say, oh, I'm having an outdoor sale here.
Yeah, we don't really have anything that addresses that, whether it be items like what is referred to here for this particular property, whether it be vehicle sales, boat sales, any kind of RV sales. You could consider it through some kind of shielding. We do have landscaping and buffering requirements for all non-residential properties. This one is kind of unique in the fact that my understanding is they may not even have a building that would be selling anything. And so there will be landscaping requirements that will come into play, most notably for the street side, that will shield those items to a certain degree, but by no means will it shield everything. I mean, you'll still be able to see into the lot and be able to tell that there are chicken coops and deer blinds and whatnot being sold there. But we could certainly look at having something a little bit more stringent that would really help shield that. I think that the downside potentially of that is then it would take away some of that visibility that those owners may want to have for the products that they're looking at selling.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. I guess, would you recommend anything or see how it goes and we can always come back to the topic if?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend anything really hard and fast, such as fencing around it. If anything, we could look to maybe increase the landscaping requirements so that there may be more trees that would be planted, especially along the front property line and around the parking lot than what we currently require. There's a cost to that too, obviously, and I'm always cognizant of that, especially with a lot of smaller business owners that are probably making sure that their bottom line is being met when they're taking on the cost of potentially buying or leasing land and then any improvements on that land. But we could certainly look into maybe increasing the landscaping regulations a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Item F, sump pump discharge ordinance update. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This one is an item that rose to our attention last week during public comments. So I wanted to share our ordinance as it pertains to the sump pump discharge. It was updated back in 2022. Largely, the change that we made is that we wanted to pull back downspouts and sump pump lines 10 feet from the property line for essentially new construction or anything that's causing issues with the neighbors' properties. We catch a lot of these complaints throughout the year, mainly in the spring and fall. And so we send out code enforcement, and Joe does a really good job at meeting with the residents and discussing this with them. But in the cases that are normally brought out, it's water crossing the sidewalks. That water crossing the sidewalk then will freeze in the winter. Same thing can be said for discharging on the road. We've got a few places where water gets discharged into the road, and then as it crosses the road, it'll freeze. We have taken care of a few of those in the past, mainly on Gilman and Elgin. So this item is just mainly a chance to kind of take a look at the downspout and sump pump setback lines and offer any kind of suggestions to changes you may want to make.
Again, this is something that you're seeing for the first time, so maybe you just want to think about this, talk to your neighbors, whatever your constituents, whatever you need to do, and then we can revisit this in the near future. Alderperson Blondie?
Mayor, yeah, just, so like Dennis, the issue that was brought up here at the previous meeting, I mean, the current ordinance and things we have in place here, was there something to address that already? And
The only thing that may address that is item D, the pre-existing downspouts and sump pump lines shall not have to abide by the setback requirements herein unless and until the city administrator or designee determines that the setback negatively impacts the public's health, safety, or welfare. That might be the only place and that may be challengeable.
Okay. So I guess I was kind of thinking, that situation, I mean, looking at the pictures now, I mean, it did seem like that is, and I didn't know if it came into the drainage side, but, or nuisance, but it did seem like that's kind of a problem, what was in those pictures. But again, I don't know if there's an easy way to address that or not.
Can I? So what you said earlier about on Gilman, the city did go in and address that same type of situation, but it had to do with more residences, and you could talk to that. And then the other one, did you say at Elgin? So my personal opinion is, since the city has already done this type of work should be done for this person that came here, because we have done so in the past. So maybe you could expand on that.
If that is what the council's want us to do, we can put together an RFP to get an engineer on board to draw those up and put that project out for bid in a similar fashion to what was done on both Elgin and Gilman.
Could we do that in-house?
We could do this in-house as long as there's no utilities in the way. We haven't done any kind of a Julie out there, so if there's utilities in the way, it'll be difficult to have any kind of drainage installed without those relocating, and those need to be relocated during a larger capital project.
Alderperson McIntyre.
Yes, Mayor. I guess I only have two questions. Dennis, obviously the stagnant water concerns me, and I mean, obviously, but when was the last time, like, this road, like, just looking at the curb and gutter, it just looked like, it's been a while since it's been redone or resurfaced. Is there any schedule to have any work done in this area? Has current work been done? I struggle because why I see this as being very frustrated, and I would also be frustrated resident coming here about this, because I'd be worried about the stagnant water and everything. Again, how often is this happening? I don't know these questions, and I'm not trying to knock down what the resident had to say, again, just based off the pictures. But it's just like, is this commonly like this, first off? And then second off, like, when was the last time this was done? Or do we see any time in the future that we're going to be doing any type of road work there, that this could be part of solving a project? I mean, I know it's frustrating for them, but why invest more if we're already planning on doing something to that street here in the future, or the near future?
So the sump pump discharges quite a bit. I suspect there's a field tile from the fields kind of up the hill from it that are pulling it down and maybe getting picked up by some of their footing tiles. But it does stay wet quite a bit. As for when this road is going to be redone, sadly, this wouldn't be one of our priority roads. We just installed a new water main to loop around from Hilldale to tie into Crestview. And so, not Crestview, to Birchwood, kind of all the way wrapped around because of a couple dead end mains. And so without that, the sanitary sewer was replaced as part of the Hilldale project up to a point where we could get positive fall. And so maybe half the road's sanitary sewer has been replaced. So, I mean, as we begin to remove some of those items that are kind of key in how we've been selecting projects,
I don't necessarily think this project is going to come up anytime in the near future.
Alderperson Martin?
So, thank you. Did you say, is there a stormwater tie-in here on that road, or there's not?
There is a inlet in the edge of that driveway.
There's a stormwater pipe?
Well, there's just an inlet that discharges into the creek.
Well, I know, oh, I see. So there's no stormwater pipe that they can tie into?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
All right, moving on. G, jetter truck replacement discussion. Brian?
Thank you. The city currently owns a 2019 Vacon jetter truck. It's 6 years old. The replacement schedule is due to be, I think, 29/30 would be the 10-year replacement schedule. Staff's had several conversations on equipment, the use of it. We're using them more, the extreme conditions they're used under, and the potential for costly repairs. Being a $500,000-$600,000 piece of equipment, some of the repairs can be very costly, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. We did kind of see this scenario with the street sweeper. Street sweeper's used half the year, daily. In year 7, we had roughly a little under $40,000 in repairs. That could have been bypassed had we possibly entered into traded it in 5 years. Currently with the street sweeper, council did agree to look at a 5-year replacement program with the street sweeper. So I'm pretty excited about that. Staff's goal is to clean 100 to 125,000 feet of sanitary and storm sewers every year. It's for CMOM. Currently, rough estimates, if staff was to hire out that routine cleaning, you're probably looking at $250,000 to $500,000 a year if we were to hire that out. The jetter truck is a specialized piece of equipment that must be built. You can't just go buy them on a lot. So sometimes with the start of the process to the finish, it could take several months. If we were to wait for a costly repair or for more issues to start happening, again, we would have to then start the process, and it could take several months to finally get something ordered. Plus, we'd want it to be budgeted. Staff was told that with the new EPA emissions, the 2027 models will have more emission standards. I've been told this could be anywhere from a $30,000 to $50,000 increase due to the equipment that has to be put on the trucks to meet emissions. We did reach out to 2 companies, Co Equipment and EJ. Co reps Vactor, EJ reps Vacon. Those were the Sourcewell prices we received. And you can see after trade-in, the Vacon is about $16,000 cheaper than the Vactor. Currently, in our MRF, we have funded around $391,000. As you can see, that would cover the cost of a new one after trade-in. I kind of listed, our current 10-year MRF schedule. What is nice about it is usually over 10 years funding transfers are lower, but the drawback is having an aging unit. We are utilizing that piece of equipment more and more every year, putting it under extreme conditions. Maintenance is going to increase yearly as it ages and as we use it more. And that also includes downtime. The more we have to take it to the shop to get maintenance done, the more we're not using it. We have spoken with EJ, who reps Vacon, and this kind of goes back to with the street sweeper. We'd enter into a buyback program where we would have a known value as long as we agree to the maintenance, which is EJ staff with their costs would come down and look at our piece of equipment and recommend any repairs that need to be done, and then the city then would follow through with those repairs. And again, this does not obligate us to, in 5 years, to purchase another one. We could keep it at 6, 7, 8, 10 years. You could keep it longer. But obviously with that comes the possibility of, again, high dollar maintenance issues. With the street sweeper, it's a 5-year MRF schedule with a known trade-in. Benefits would be you just have a new truck every year. It would be a lot of components of that truck could stay under warranty. If there's any issues, you would have it looked at. We just recently had ours taken in for another emissions issue. I believe I did sign off on the bill today. It was $3,500. Being 6 years old, they wouldn't warranty that. So that was just a cost to emissions on the chassis. Hopefully with a new unit, you wouldn't have as much repairs. Hopefully a new unit wouldn't have any issues, especially if we were to get in before the 2027 emissions, so to speak, be the guinea pig of the new emissions. Hopefully we wouldn't have very many recalls or anything like that, like you might see with brand new trucks that have new emissions and going through that process. Funding levels would just increase every 5 years, a smaller amount versus keeping it 10 years and then buying a new truck and seeing those transfers shoot up quite a bit more. A 5-year period, they go up a little bit. The next year, they would go up a little bit, or the next five-year cycle. Again, there are sufficient funds in the MRF. At this time, staff would recommend council to consider replacing the jetter truck in this fiscal year with a VACON. Again, as we do more, these trucks getting used more, and there's that just possibility for higher maintenance cost at years 6, 7, 8, and so forth. So with that, council, any discussion or recommendations?
Mayor.
Alderperson Martin.
How long is the warranty on the VACON? Well, on both. It's the same, right? But
Basically, it's the same. The debris tanks are 5 years, the water tanks are 10 years. I think it's like a bumper-to-bumper 1 year, and I believe the blower portion of it, which actually creates the vacuum, is a year warranty.
and then, so we had the last jetter completely replaced?
Yeah, so in 2017, the city replaced their Vactor, a 2008 Vactor in 2017. The first few years, there were some kind of major issues that it kept failing. We had it worked on, failed. So eventually, VACON just one day just brought us a brand new Vactor, or VACON, and took the old one. So.
That's, I want to say, is astonishing and really good for the city. And that's because you had the warranty on it and you had a new machine. So I think that's just a perfect example of why this is financially beneficial for the city to not get into having old equipment, because that's when things can start getting costly. So I think this is wise, and I think this is a good move. And with EJ Equipment and VACON being such a good company to do that before, I like the idea of staying with them.
Mayor?
Alderperson McIntyre.
Yeah, I would also highly support this. This is a very specialized piece of equipment. Coming from the previous council and just learning what this stuff is, to me, it makes sense. I appreciate your recommendation. I appreciate you looking into this and stuff like this. While I agree, I would love to push every one of our piece of equipment to end of life. I think it becomes extremely expensive when you do that. So you have an opportunity here to make a good benefit on a trade-in. We're nearly receiving half of the cost of a new one in the trade-in. I think that's a really great opportunity. The longer you keep it, the less value it has, plus the maintenance that goes into it. So just based on the knowledge I know what this piece of equipment does, everything we do is sewer and all the things, to me, makes sense to make sure that we have a truck that's under warranty, that is newer, that provides our guys with some of the best equipment, because it just, to me, you don't want to be down at these prices. And I just feel like to wait and continue to wait deteriorates your trade-in value, and God only knows what goes on behind that as well with maintenance expenses and stuff like this. So I would support it, and I appreciate the amount of effort you put into looking through all this stuff.
I'd like to make a comment to compliment you. The first time we saw this, there wasn't very much information. This is excellent. You have provided a lot of detailed information for the council to make a decision. Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor?
Yes, Alderperson Sluter.
Yeah. So going into more little detail with the with the piece of equipment. What all does it do? Like, just simplify that. Like, what are the basics of what it does?
Everything but baked bread.
Okay.
We use it daily. Potholing utilities, the more utilities that get put in the ground, fibers, electric, communications, all that. We're constantly potholing. We use it for service lines, potholing and repairing curb stops, water mains, sewer mains, investigate sinkholes. We use it some on catch basins that have a lot of leaves and debris. We use it for that. Again, it's used for flushing sewers, jetting sewers to keep them clean. It's used to install manholes. I mean, it's just for everything. I mean,
I appreciate it. I just, I'm a big believer in this piece of equipment with what I do for work. But yeah, I would be in favor of it for sure. It's an important item. It's an important thing to use in situations that it is needed, and to have a good piece of equipment for it, I'd definitely be in favor for it.
Anyone else?
Mayor?
Oh,
What caused the initial kind of consideration of an early replacement? Can you fill us in on that?
Again, it kind of goes back to the street sweeper. Just that thought of, equipment being used constantly. The street sweeper's out, every day during warm months, whether it's just normal routine sweeping or whether it's for service requests, accidents, whatever. And just seeing some of those costly repairs as the equipment ages, and then kind of hitting that big repair that we had, and it's just like, had we just thought about maybe upping it a year or two, instead of putting that money into repairs, that money could have went towards a newer unit. That just, I'm a believer in the equipment we have out on the street kind of shows what type of city we are. You can see some cities that, I don't want to say don't care as much, but maybe don't have the fun, whatever. You can kind of see their equipment versus a city that really cares. And just trying to avoid those high costs, because I would rather see money go towards something new or a piece of equipment. It's nice to see when it's under warranty. And you run it down to the shop, it gets repaired, you realize that would have been a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 bill, but it was covered under warranty.
You mentioned the $3,600 bill. Has there been other major things on this particular
On
piece of
this,
equipment?
the biggest one on this was there's automatic greasers. It shows like it was running, but it wasn't, so the bearings went out in the fan, and I believe it was like an $8,000 or $9,000 repair. Since then, they now installed a light that then it's a visual now you see, instead of just seeing something move but not know if it's pumping grease, the light will now show whether or not it is.
And when was that?
That was last year.
Thank you.
So I kind of showed roughly on the last page just kind of the maintenance up the top right, just kind of showing roughly in 21, 2000, 2012, 6, 14, and 6. And over the last 3 years, we've had about 26. And again, that's not counting the emissions issue we had for 3,500 this year.
Mayor.
Alderperson Blondie?
So Brian, is there any difference between the Vactor and the VACCON?
So originally, I know VACCON's more, they like a fan versus a PD blower. They can do both, but they prefer the fan. Talking with them, PD blowers are more, they both perform the same kind of around the truck. You have a boom that goes out, and around the truck, they perform the same. But what's nice about a blower is it's meant for like longer runs. So like down at the wastewater treatment plant, if you were to take a tank down and you need to throw a hose over but get out to the middle, a PD blower will perform better. So yeah, both these are basically a single engine PD blower unit. Same size debris tank, same size water tank. So pretty, as close to apples as you can get.
So from a staff perspective, though, either one of these would perfectly meet the needs?
Yes.
And then, was there any look at, like, I guess maybe more of like the total cost of ownership of these? I mean, does one get better fuel economy or anything like that? Or was there any other things considered?
Not necessarily. I know the dual engine of which we are not choosing to go away from this time. They kind of tote fuel savings, that you don't have to run the main engine as much, and you can just run the auxiliary engine to run everything, so it saves on fuel. I personally feel that that would come into be a factor if this was a company that had like 10 or 15, when you're talking possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars in fuel. I personally don't feel I could be able to track, are we saving a little bit of fuel? You know, are we saving $2,000, $5,000 in fuel? But
Okay. And then on the maintenance then, I guess to get that guaranteed trade-in price, right, is it, how does that work? Is it, they're going to come up, show up twice a year and say, we need you to do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't, we're not going to honor this trade-in price, or how does that work?
so hopefully that's not necessarily the way it'd work. Obviously, we would trust them. We've been with them for a long time. We trust their knowledge of the piece of equipment. I would hope they wouldn't come up and try to say we need $30,000 worth of work done. I don't foresee that. I think their main goal is to make sure that it's in good shape and that we do perform the proper maintenance or repair certain things, so that when it does come time to trade in, that they're getting the best piece of machine. They know everything about that machine, all the maintenance that's been performed. They feel very confident that they can offer us a better price.
And that's fine. To me, in my mind, it'd be good then to have that really documented right in writing that says, we agree we'll do the normal maintenance, scheduled maintenance, but we just don't want to have that scenario where they just show up and start making it, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. And we're like, okay. come on.
Believe me, that I've thought about that.
Okay,
So
perfect.
that's something I would, if that started, it would be obviously a discussion we would have to have.
And then the, well, I guess I would recommend having the discussion before we agree to buy it, though, not, not 2 years into it. But the other thing I noticed is, so am I reading this right if I look at like the 25 through 31 schedule and the 30 through 36, we're underfunded for the future replacements of those by 49,000 and 57,000? Is that what that memo is saying?
So again, a lot of this is just me trying to just estimate. It's assumptions. I don't know if they're going to go up $10,000 a year or not. So this was just saying where I have over. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I see the over 49,000,
Right.
over
So
57,000.
if we were to basically fund $60,700 a year, when we would have a total of $724,000. If for whatever reason the price of a new one is $675, and again that's going up $10,000 a year, it could go up $8,000 a year, it could go up $12,000. I don't know.
Okay, so you're saying we'd be overfunded?
Overfunded, yes.
Okay.
Which is always a good thing because again, instead of 675, it might be 689,000.
Okay.
Or it might be less.
I read it the wrong way,
Okay.
thinking it was underfunded.
No,
and
we
so
would be
it's-
overfunded 49,000. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so we have 3 firm yeses. How many, are there any persons that do not want this to move forward? Because the action requested is council discussion, which we've had, and direction. Are there any persons that do not want this to be moved forward? Okay, I think you have your direction. All right, next, Brian again, Public Works Storage Building discussion.
Thank you again. So just kind of wanted to catch the new council up to speed on the Public Works Storage Building. In February, it caught fire. Here we are a year later trying to work with PJ Hare. We started with Blue Sky. They kind of chose to step away from it being such a large project. So we started working with PJ Hare, and they've worked with our insurance company. So far, they estimated the repairs to be $340,000. They have given the city roughly $304,000. The remaining 36 would be given to us upon completion of the repairs. I kind of listed some options, stuff that staff and I we've talked about. Again, if there's anything council has thought of that maybe we haven't, open to suggestions, but mainly, staff would recommend the following. Whether we just complete the repairs for the $340,000 and kind of continue to use the building as just storage. Other options could be if council so choose to demo and make it a parking lot. or council could sell the property as is or demo and sell the property. Something that we have talked about a little with past councils, just want to make aware of that councils in the past have chosen to, we've budgeted roughly 50,000 in 4 different departments for a total of 200,000 that we've basically been setting aside for something in the future as far as a public works building. At the moment, the street and distribution buildings lack sufficient space for all the equipment we have. I'm assuming as we continue to grow, there's the possibility of more equipment, more staff. Moving the equipment, although it's tough at times, you know, kind of going and getting this, switching them out, moving equipment out to get to other pieces of equipment, it can be tough at times, but we are getting by. And again, I wouldn't want to, if council chooses to, you know, keep the 304,000 to maybe put towards, again, the future public works facility, public works could get by, although it's not efficient. Again, we would be able to get by. We also looked into the possibility of repairing what was recommended and possibly raising it. I think they could raise it roughly 16 inches, but that was at the cost of almost $300,000. Once I saw that, I would not recommend doing that. And then another, we looked into a price of a new, kind of just a budget number, not really getting into the details. An estimate would be 1.2 million. Although I feel that that's probably on the high side. Again, it's not something I would recommend putting that type of money into a building that is just going to be used for storage for the time being. I put on kind of a list. This was just to maybe help council realize some of the equipment that has moved in and out of that building or can be stored there or has been stored in the past. Again, this isn't everything, but it's just kind of showing that as a department, we have a lot of equipment. We have a lot of nice equipment. We do know the benefits of keeping equipment under roof. And obviously having equipment localized in one area obviously increases efficiency. So just basically looking for council discussion and direction on what they maybe want to see done with this public works storage.
I personally have 2 questions. First of all, what is your recommendation for this? Because I know you gave the council 3 choices, and you gave the council 3 choices the last time before the new council was here. And also in the same vein, maybe Dennis, you could talk about the future facility study, and maybe that will help the council decide what direction to go in.
For me, just kind of really, I'm a try to be a forward-thinking person. The future, knowing that what the struggles we've had as a department, again, in just small spaces, running out of room. My thoughts would be the hope to possibly just keep the insurance money and figure out something to do with the property. And again, hope for something in the future to happen sooner than later with a possible bigger combined facility of the distribution and collections department and the street department, also with the mechanic, just all together, more efficiency. Obviously, whatever we would possibly do, I'd want it to be, make sure we look to the future. So not just build a facility that meets our needs today, but something that meets the needs for the next 20, 30 years.
And along those talks, the police department is currently also out of office space. City Hall, we're onto our last space without building more walls. So I mean, in general, I think we've all kind of hit where we're at building wise. And so one of the things that I had originally brought up with the city administrator, Ray Forsyth, was bringing in an architect to look at the different facilities we have and then to kind of put together like a citywide space study, looking at what we have as a city personnel wise, as well as what we would need if we were to grow. And then where might something like that fit, whether it's individual departments, whether it's building up a second story on City Hall, or whether it's putting everybody together on kind of one larger campus. And then also how that works when you have the different funding types. So each of those different entities kind of has a different chance at reaching different grant money. But in general, we wouldn't necessarily know until we were to look forward with something like that. So while Ray was in favor of it, City Administrator Jim Snyder was not as in favor of it, and so that did not move forward. And so that has been funded in the past in our building fund, and so we do currently have some money sitting in there. I think we keep rebudgeting it every single year.
Yeah, we have about 100,000 for that.
So there is funds for such a search like that. And so we were looking at maybe assembling an RFP for that and kind of getting some feedback from council, and if that's another direction that we're wanting to go. I know that kind of hijacked Brian's talk, but two different discussions there apparently.
Yeah, and I'll add too that we have about 600,000 at the end of the current fiscal year that we have put aside for the Public Works building. So that's also in the building fund.
So hearing all that, instead of concentrating on building something on that site, keep that in mind as you make your decision.
And just something, obviously the insurance company kind of continues to ask every so often where we stand. Are we going to rebuild? Because they got to obviously budget for that and know if we're going to be, I guess, requesting the other 36,000 after completion. So.
One of the choices that isn't there, it says the last choice, the last bullet point says demo and sell or sell the property as it currently sits. So that or is sell it as is.
Yes. Yep. Demo and sell or sell the property as the current building sits.
Okay.
Again, if there's any other stuff, we're
Mayor.
all ears.
Alderperson Blondie?
So I guess, is there any, like, sense of urgency we have to make some kind of decision for that insurance money? Is there like hey, after 12 months, the insurance company's going to say, hey, you got to make a decision, you're going to lose this money, or is there anything like that?
Yeah, I can't remember the date. I don't know if you remember, Joni, but it was kind of like 2 years?
I know that any like auxiliary expenses that we have is just for a 2-year period. So we've passed the 1-year mark. So, and that would be any, additional expenses that we've incurred, such as the lease of the evidence, which obviously once that evidence building, that will go away once that's built. But yes, I believe they are looking for a resolution within that period.
Okay. I mean, to me, it's hard to know, I guess, without, I really like this strategic facility plan, to look at it that way and see what are the needs, not just of Public Works, but everybody, and then see how this fits in there, because I guess worst case, if we have to make a decision quick, I would say don't rebuild it, just pocket the money, and because that location probably is not going to be great over time. But to me, it's so hard. We're a wide range of options here, right? We could make a parking lot, we could sell it, we could rebuild it, and that tells me we really just don't probably know exactly what maybe is the right decision. And so that's where I think if we had that strategic plan, it would be like, okay, it's probably clear we can see if that building, that location even fits in the longer term plan. If it doesn't, that probably makes our decision much easier. But I think without knowing that, it's probably hard to give direction unless you guys really have a good feel for it. But I would say right now we probably don't. So I don't know how soon we could do something. Is that something that could be done within a year to kind of get us under that 2-year time window to have a study like that done?
I imagine something like that could be done within a year.
Well, and I think probably the only thing the insurance company would need to know is if we plan to rebuild, right?
Okay.
Brian, I don't think they'd need to know the decision that we're making other than are we going to rebuild, because that's the additional funds that we would receive, but only if we completely repair. Correct, Brian?
Yep.
Is that your understanding?
Yep.
So they don't need to know any of these other decisions. We would just have to say we are not going to repair and rebuild, or we are.
Okay. But yeah, to me, I would be all in favor. Let's do this study that we've been talking about for years, it sounds like, and that way we have a much better picture, not just for this one-off, but for the entire city.
And again, something to just kind of note that obviously the building's sitting how it is. It continues to just deteriorate. So getting rained on, it's, you know, it's an eyesore. So it's just something to keep in mind. And again, kind of back to my initial, $340,000 is a lot to me for potential just storage off-site. You know, it's one thing to have it next, you know, in a bigger area with everybody, but just to have it off-site. So basically it would be just storage.
Mayor, do they have a price for tearing the building down? Has anybody looked into that?
No, it was something kind of originally we thought we could possibly handle in-house.
Okay.
Mayor?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, Alderperson Sluter.
Yes. I was just gonna say, demoing it as an eyesore, like, is there a problem with like just demoing it, leveling it out, and then making a decision?
The only thing that would take off the board, obviously, is completing the repairs that have been identified with the
Yeah.
insurance money.
So if we did a demo and then, you know, kind of just cleared the area and then did the study, would that be beneficial to do it that way?
It's an option.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Financially, that would be workable, right? The demo and then the study?
I think the bigger question on that would be, is the property worth more with the building in a burned condition than if the building or the property with nothing but a concrete slab?
So then is the question selling the property as is the question?
If council is wanting to give direction to staff to look into the cost of a vacant property versus a burned building, that is something we can do.
Okay. So would you repeat that and then we'll get this moving here?
I guess the question would be, does council want staff to look at the difference in price between a empty vacant lot there versus the building in its current condition?
Okay, how about let's just nod some heads instead of going around? Yes, no? Go ahead.
I think there's a lack of knowledge, probably especially from the new council members,
Yes.
of what state the building's in. There's salvageable portions of the building, right, as I understand it? It's not a total loss, so you're saying bulldozing it would essentially wipe away some salvageable, usable equity.
Correct. I mean, I guess you would lose out on the 36,000 for what you'd get if you rebuilt, and then, yeah.
Mayor?
Okay, Dennis, could you clarify this again?
So the question is the direction of council for staff to look at the potential sale price of an empty property there versus the sale price of the building in its current condition? Yes.
Yes. Okay, we good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on.
Mayor, can I say one more
Oh,
thing on
yes,
that?
Alderperson Moss.
I would agree with the space study issue. I mean, the fact that
Oh, yes.
it seems like a previous council didn't have clear direction. This council doesn't seem to have a clear path forward, I guess, not direction, but would indicate to me that there's just kind of a lack of a strategic, roadmap here. So a municipality that's grown the way we have over the last 2 decades, it seems like that's money well spent for a space study, and I think that's, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I would be in favor of that.
Okay, I guess I'm assuming that everybody was in favor of that, but let's take a straw poll for who's interested in a space study. Alderperson McIntyre?
Aye.
Alderperson Blundy? Alderperson Martin? Alderperson Moss?
Yes.
Alderperson Sluter?
Yes.
Alderperson Johnson? Yes. Alderperson Ernst? Yes. Alderperson Smith?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
one quick question. Do we currently have any stuff still stored in the burnt building right now? I mean, are you guys still using it for storage?
Public Works is not.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That's all I need to know. So then, yes, I believe we would want to see a value of what the current property is worth.
Okay. We good? All right, I, city administrator recruitment. So the question, and Joni's going to take this, but the question is, do we do an internal job search, or do we pay a professional company? So, Joni?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor Stevens asked me to kind of look into this so we could kind of kick off a discussion on what path we would like to take. So I just did a little bit of kind of research as to at least the city administrators during my tenure, which there have been 8. So I wanted to kind of take a look at the different process that we've used for those. So I do have those detailed here, and you can kind of see the tenure of everyone. And the recruitment path that we used. In most cases, we did use a consultant. There were a couple of exceptions where we did an in-house process. There's also a cost that you can see that we've paid, as well as the key personnel as I recall them. So our last one with Jim Snyder, we used GovHR, which is now MGT is the name of that company. So we've used them twice, and then we've had a couple other consultants that, one we used with Ray Forsyth. I do remember that one. There was a little bit more involvement with staff, especially towards the end of that process. The city clerk and even the alderman. I say the staff, but actually even the alderman got a little bit more involved in that than I think with the GovHR that we did recently. So I have not personally been involved in this recruitment process. However, I know that in-house, as I mentioned, the consultant goes through the advertising. They typically put together like a really nice kind of flyer that goes out to a lot of different organizations, along with just the contacts that consultant has, and knowing kind of who's in the field and who's available. I know that was definitely the case with our last consultant. As well as they go through the initial screening process. I do remember one of the in-house, that screening was done by a committee of the aldermen. So there were a committee coming into City Hall and actually doing phone interviews. I do recall that. So the consultant would take care of that as well, all of that initial screening, obviously interviewing and kind of narrowing the pool. Evaluating those as they come in, and then eventually just the entire placement process to where I think as a kind of comparison, obviously the council has a major role in it, but it's not to the extent of with a consultant because they're kind of taking care of that. Obviously that's what we're paying them for. So the council as well as the staff gets involved more towards the end of the process, where some of that initial screening is done by the consultant. So that's the major difference between the two. And I would say we've had varying results depending upon who the recruiter was and who the candidates were, quite frankly. So it's hard to say yes, this works every time, because that's not always the case. But I do know that there's value to having that consultant, and there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. So obviously the advantage, if it's done in-house, is that you save that, that cost, but there's obviously also a cost to the labor that would be required by not just the staff, but also the council that would be more involved in that. So at this point, I think in discussions with Mayor Stevens, we're just kind of looking for direction. If the council would like staff to kind of develop a request for qualifications, we could send that out. I was kind of just doing some Google searches. I did hear from another person, I don't know them personally, we've never used them, but I've heard actually from a former city administrator that was a good company. And then the MGT I mentioned, which is GovHR, and we could also look into other companies that might be available. So that's one approach if you would like give direction for us to do that, or do you prefer the in-house approach?
Mayor,
Alderperson Blondie?
I guess from a staff perspective, I mean, I think this is something that we probably want to move fast on, and so, I mean, does staff have time to commit to this? Because it is a big effort to
No.
recruit someone.
I could say
Okay.
that pretty, I mean, and I don't know to what extent Mayor Stevens wants me involved, but, you know, I'm just finished the budget, but now I'm going to be starting the audit process, which is another very labor intensive from my standpoint. So again, I don't know how that would look if we did in-house. That would be up to the council. If you would want, again, a committee to handle that, but you know, from a staff perspective, obviously Dennis would not be involved in that, but I would imagine other department heads would. But again, and that's not our expertise. So, you know, I'm not in HR, so, so I don't feel completely comfortable with that, but obviously we would figure it out if that's what the council would like.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's would be good to go with an RFQ and look and see what it would cost us to have a firm do it for us. I think one of the bigger concerns I have is just, I really didn't know there was that much turnover. I mean, it kind of...
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
I just said I didn't know there was that much turnover.
Oh,
I
yeah.
kind of indirectly knew there was, but
Yep.
so I think that's something when we go through this process, so we really need to shore up on maybe more clarity of exactly what it is we're looking and expecting out of the city, you know, a city administrator and someone that would fill that role. Because to me, this turnover, most of them were less than 3 years.
Yes.
I mean, that's...
Yes, we've had two
Seems
that
like a
were
lot.
about 10 years each, and the rest
Yeah.
of them were 2 to 2.5 years. So,
So I think we should put a lot of focus on that, and that's where somebody maybe that's more of a professional recruiter can help us with that. If we give clarity on exactly what we're looking for, and kind of like to that, we want somebody with a little bit more longevity, I would think. Speaking for myself, anyway, I think it'd be great to say, you know, have somebody that would stay with us at least 5 years to keep it a little more consistent. But I would say that, and to me, like, so if the RFQs aren't outrageous, I would say let's go that route. Otherwise, we could, form a committee and do it ourselves, I guess, if we think it's too much money to pay somebody outside.
Go ahead.
Alderperson Martin? Oh, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just going to say, the way I see it, this day and age, it seems, you can reach a lot of people online, and we could put it out there and do it in-house. I don't have a problem being on the committee to help do that. If the council wanted to do that, I would be for that, to save that. And then if we can't find anybody soon, then we could go ahead and do this other thing. But I would only want to do that if it's not going to be a burden on staff.
Alderperson McIntyre?
Yeah, I think for me, especially with us having a possible internal candidate, I would recommend that we go ahead and get an RFQ out there to see what this would cost us. I think it's value added. I think our staff has been burdened for almost a whole year having to do more than one job and being asked of stuff. I just don't think it's ideal to ask our staff to do this. With us having an internal candidate, I think it allows us to have more transparency that way by hiring a firm to do this, just in my opinion. And it allows for their, at the end of the day, we have the final say, but it allows for some biases to stay out of that. I think the council should definitely have an active role in it, and I think that can be done by the consultant at the end of this experience. So when they get down to their last candidates, that they could, bring in counsel for interviews and such like that. But I think it would be ideal for us to go ahead and make that investment to just clarify to our community that we are obviously taking this serious. We respect our staff, and that we want to make sure that this is fully transparent. So again, it's really expensive. I've worked with GovHR as well. SGR is another company. I'll send you an email about it. There's different ones out there, but yeah, again, sometimes you don't get the best, but I think it's worth at least casting the net.
Thank you.
I
Alderperson
agree.
Smith?
I agree also with what, I'll just reiterate what Alderperson McIntyre said. I think we should source it out and see what they can do for us without burdening staff.
Thank you. All right, any objections to an RFQ of those persons who haven't spoken? Okay, it seems an RFQ is the consensus. Thank you. All right, other business. Is there other business? No other business. All right, next item on the agenda is the executive session. Do I read the numbers too? Okay, it's 5 ILCS 120/2C11 litigation. When an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. And there will
Motion.
not be action coming out of this executive session.
Make a motion to move to executive session.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carried.
That requires a roll call vote to go into executive session?
Sorry.
We got him
Okay,
back.
roll call vote. Sorry.
I can do it manually if you want.
Yes.
Blendy.
Aye.
Ernst.
Aye.
Johnson. Aye. Martin. McIntyre.
Aye.
Moss.
Aye.
Sluter.
Aye.
And Smith.
Aye.
Gotta go. We're returning to open session at 9:35 on May 12th, 2025. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned at 9:36.